Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning back into the SMT YouTube channel. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've been doing a lot of videos answering a lot of viewer questions. A lot of people have, legitimate questions about telecoms and the way things are going and the way they've been. So what I've done is I've taken those questions, things that I'm seeing pretty consistently and, things that have been asked with frequency, and I've turned those into topics that I've covered here on the channel. One of the things that keeps coming up is, why is it that AT&T and Verizon keep winning? Why is it that in the history and in the past, it's always been this way? It's almost like, they want to know when T-Mobile and Sprint can kind of take over as king of the hill. You know what it is? There's two exact reasons why AT&T and Verizon continue to win and why Sprint and T-Mobile just can't seem to get over the hump. AT&T Executive Vice President and CFO John Stevens actually was speaking at the 2020 Citi Investor Conference. He basically said that we lead in all aspects of network spectrum. Their spectrum types and different frequencies and their portfolio. And then he talked about the last 5 years and how they had been grooming their spectrum assets specifically for positioning themselves to dominate in the wireless industry. Clearly, it's worked. They have completely overhauled their LTE performance. They have positioned themselves to overpass Verizon if they haven't already and continue to dominate in LTE. And then they've positioned themselves to really dominate in 5G as well. AT&T has almost 160 megahertz of sub-6 gigahertz spectrum. That's an incredible amount of spectrum. They also have lots of different types in there with different LTE bands that they utilize, and they're going to continue to utilize those for LTE, but they're also going to use them in 5G. They've got ample amounts of low-band spectrum. They've had 700 megahertz. They've acquired more 700 megahertz FirstNet contract, with Band 14. They acquired more spectrum from the C-Spire acquisition. They've been positioning themselves very well. They've got over 50 megahertz of low-band spectrum currently, and that's plenty. AT&T also has over 600 megahertz of millimeter wave, which is going to be important for them when making that really, really fast type of 5G. While even though it doesn't have building penetration and we know its limitations, we do know that they will be using it in the business sense. They'll be using it in enterprise, and having that nationally and it being continuous, they'll probably be adding more in the near future and more auctions. Let's talk a little bit about FirstNet. They've got FirstNet projected to build in 50 states, and this also includes Puerto Rico. As of right now, they currently have tens of thousands of sites that already have Band 14 deployed. They're using it for LTE currently. It's also going to be used for 5G in the near future. And of course, with that great footprint across the nation, that pretty much means that AT&T is going to have the first real low-band 5G network. I know T-Mobile says they have it, but they just don't have enough of it out there. AT&T is going to continue to use LTE for Band 14, and they're also going to do a slice for their 5G, and there'll be some dynamic spectrum sharing, I'm sure. So they'll be allocated intelligently. And, the way that T-Mobile is going to do it, they're going to do the same thing. The thing is, though, is that their network spending is very different. So I don't trust T-Mobile to do it without the money like AT&T is going to do it, because they spend big in their network. I'd also like to throw out that, Band 14, the 700 megahertz spectrum, is available currently in tons of markets, and I do believe that it's supposed to top out in like 500 markets. So that's very national. Check out this spectrum portfolio that AT&T has. They've got band 2, 4, 5, 12, 14, 17, 29, 30, and 66, and that's what they have for LTE. In terms of their 5G, they've already deployed some Band 5 NR. Now, this is regional, it's not national, but they have deployed it. You can expect more of that from Band 14 in the future. But from the millimeter wave, they've got N260, which is their 39 gigahertz. They also do have 24 gigahertz holding, so more millimeter wave on the way. The bottom line is AT&T has a lot of spectrum, and they know how to build it out, and they know how to deploy it. And this is why they win. It's a combination of money and spectrum. They can build out the spectrum because they have the money. They can purchase the spectrum because they have the money. It's the money. Many people don't know this, but Verizon and T-Mobile actually have very similar spectrum holdings. In fact, it's really hard to distinguish the difference between them. I would estimate that there's probably somewhere between like 5 megahertz concentration of spectrum difference between Verizon and T-Mobile, with Verizon just having a little bit more. In fact, Dish is not even that far from having as much as T-Mobile and Verizon. One thing that Verizon does have more than T-Mobile is millimeter wave. It's just not T-Mobile's focus. They haven't been buying so much of it, and they really haven't deployed much of it yet. It's going to be important in the future, of course. T-Mobile does have some, but Verizon's all in on millimeter wave, and they're spending tons of money on it, and they already started to deploy it. Don't forget Sprint. Sprint has the most spectrum out of all the major national carriers, and actually, it's not even really close. Last I checked, I believe, although they don't have millimeter wave, Sprint does have the most spectrum, and they only hold low band and mid band holdings. I believe Sprint has like somewhere around 150 megahertz of 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. This mid band is going to be key to unlocking 5G potential for Sprint, as well as the new T-Mobile, if and when the merger gets approved. Because you could see why that T-Mobile really wants Sprint. They want the customers, there's like 50 million of them, and then they want the spectrum because it's a massive amount of mid band. Essentially, T-Mobile would be doubling their spectrum holdings by purchasing or merging with Sprint. But let's keep it real here. It would be a complete game changer if T-Mobile was to acquire the spectrum. Their network would be completely different and have huge potential in the future. Verizon and T-Mobile have very similar spectrum holdings. They clearly have a difference in customer counts. T-Mobile's got 86 million. Verizon has like almost 140 million, something like that. But Verizon spends a lot more money than T-Mobile does. T-Mobile spends about $5 to $6 billion annually on their network capital expenditure. Verizon spends like 17 to 18 billion. Let that sink in. Verizon spends 3 times as much money than T-Mobile, and T-Mobile's network is really not even close to Verizon's. In my experience, and also looking at coverage maps, and just looking at the overall LTE footprint, LTE availability, T-Mobile's not even close. And therein lies the problem. They don't spend the money that Verizon does. For the longest time, Sprint was spending like $5 to $6 billion on their network annually. And recently, actually, it's changed quite a bit. The last couple of years, they've been spending somewhere in the network of, I want to say it was like about $9 billion. There was a year where they spent $9 billion. And then there was another year, I don't know if it was 17 or 18. They spent like $12 billion. So Sprint has actually kicked it up, and their network has greatly improved from those network upgrades and that capital expenditure. But you know who the spending king is? It's At&T. At&T has been spending over $20 billion annually for consecutive years. I believe the last capex that they disclosed was like 25 billion. The year before that, it was 21 billion. They're the only company spending over 20 billion, and they've done it for consecutive years. Therein lies the key to winning in wireless: spending money, deploying spectrum, good performing networks, happy customers. And it's happy customers who pay their bill. And they don't mind spending extra money in most cases, as long as they're getting a high-performing network. You know, the saying goes, you get what you pay for. Verizon and At&T spend the most money, and it just so happens they have the best networks in the US. T-Mobile has been spending money on their network, upgrading it, making it better, doing the best of what they have, but they just haven't been able to spend to keep up. And Sprint has started spending more money, but they've had so much to catch up on, it almost feels like now they're just trying to get par for the course. One of the things that has aggravated me about T-Mobile for so long is, I know it's important to focus on customer care, but where's the network investment? All this talk about 600 megahertz and 700 megahertz upgrades, it's not enough. Their customers have been paying to have an upgraded network. They've got, 85, 86 million customers. We should be seeing a better network from T-Mobile, in my opinion. But when you are only investing $5 to $6 billion annually, meanwhile Verizon's spending $18 billion, At&T is spending $25 billion, you're not going to be able to compete. There's just no way. You can clearly see the difference between the companies in their vision and how they plan on expanding their networks. I mean, heck, even Sprint is spending $12 billion annually. The last couple of years, they've spent $9 billion and $12 billion respectively. I commend T-Mobile for focusing on customer care. I really do respect that. It's really important, and it's something that can't be overlooked. but they're going to have to kick up their game. They really have to invest more into the network. They got to stop talking about it, and they got to start being about it. You could say whatever you want, and their ascension in the telecoms is fantastic. You know, again, like I said, it's respectable, but the network needs more investment, and T-Mobile will never catch up to Verizon and At&T unless they are willing to spend the money that At&T and Verizon are. John Legere did what he could. He changed the franchise. He changed the company's image. He made them more marketable. He made them more flamboyant. He made them recognizable as a brand. The bottom line is the networks are what sells. It's not the pink shirts. It's not the pink shoes. You know, all of that stuff it's fine. It's all part of the marketing, but the numbers don't lie. The network is a correlation of how much the company is willing to spend on it. And this is why AT&T and Verizon win. They bought the spectrum. They deploy the spectrum, they spend the money. And all of this will completely change if and when the T-Mobile merger happens, because we expect T-Mobile to dump tens of billions of dollars annually on their network. The synergies, the way that the network can be integrated with what Sprint holds in terms of assets could be truly tremendous. But that's what would have to occur. They would have to spend tens of billions of dollars on those synergies, deploy all of that spectrum to be legitimate contenders against both AT&T and Verizon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you'd like to comment on any of the points that I brought up, that would be awesome. I look forward to the discourse and the commentary down there in the comment section. Interesting to see what you guys have to say there, so go ahead and drop me a line. Also, do me a favor, take a look at some of the links in the description box below. We've got the @SMT Twitter handle. We've got the SMT Patreon page. We've got the SMT Wireless Report Podcast. All those links are there. Please, by all means, do check out all those links. That would be greatly appreciated. And before you leave, please do like this video. And if you haven't done so already, maybe this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload from the SMT. And do check out some of these other videos. I left a few of them here, some end cards. They're awesome. Check them out, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. That wraps up this one. Thank you for being here to watch. I greatly appreciate it. I am the SMT, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace.